morning, everybody. A couple of minutes late. Good to see those that are able to join us online. We've got a few that are out sick today, so we'll make that known here in a little bit. But I got some. All right. We are going to continue in our study on Book of Timothy. We're in 1 Timothy. Let me get my device here straightened up. All right. So, 1 Timothy chapter 3, if you've got your Bibles with you, we are 1 Timothy, Titus, 2 Timothy will be our study. Y'all are going to have to bear with me a little bit. It's hot up here. We started last week and we were getting to the end of the class period, and this is a time and place not to run by a chapter in the Bible. If you are a member of a congregation and the congregation does not yet have elders, then this is a topic that needs to be discussed, talked about, looked at, and discussed again. And now, like I said, it's up for us, each one of us right here, to study this out. A local work has local elders, and we kind of pointed that out a little bit last Sunday, about how it is among them. And so we don't just jump into the middle of our text from last week. Let's go ahead and I'm going to read through the text. This is a faithful saying: if a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to teach, not given to wine, not violent, not greedy for money, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not covetous, one who rules his own house well, having his children in submission with all reverence. For if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how shall he be able to take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest he be puffed up with pride, he fall into the same condemnation as the devil. And I want you to put a little asterisk by novice, because that is the one that seems to be the most dangerous. As far as the reading, not a novice, lest he fall into the same condemnation as the devil. So I want you to think about that a little bit more. Moreover, he must have a good testimony among those who are outside, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. So, we have in this display for us a reading of, would you call them qualifications? Is that what you call them? What do you call this kind of a list? A man that's blameless, husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, good behavior, hospitable, able to teach, not violent, not given to wine, not greedy, gentle, not quarrelsome, covetous. Have we picked somebody out? What would you call that? Is that a qualification for a office? Yes, it is. It is a qualification for an office. How do you qualify for something like that? How does a man qualify? Well, I guess we ought to have the talk, right? And it is a difficult one. My father served as an elder. I do remember, things that he worried about most as he was considering accepting let's just look at it first of all. What is required? What is required? First thing. Desire. You have to have a desire. If you have no one within your congregation, if there's not a man that is willing, desiring, it's not like, so there's a real unique dilemma as far as trying to evaluate this. I'm talking to the men who would be considering desiring a good work, is because as soon as you say, I want to do anything that I possibly can in my life to serve the Lord, and you're desiring a good work, then you're going to be led in this direction. Now, there's some of these things that might derail you, but then they may not. Do you desire to go into this position? And that's the first quality that really is up for discussion. It's not a desire to possess authority. to promote yourself. This is why that novice characteristic comes into a real important role, because a novice would not really understand what he's getting into and might make irrational or what is rational decisions to him, but the effect, because of his lack of foresight, would lead to a devastating effect. And we've been spending the introduction of Timothy going to Ephesus, where there were problems with individuals in the church. And he was having to deal with false teaching and then appoint men to serve as overseers. Now, there was a time, I don't know what men there might have been there that had these qualities but had some doctrinal errors, maybe being led away with Alexander and Hymenaeus. Timothy comes and straightens them out on that doctrine. They have all the other qualifications. Are they now ready? Alexander and Hymenaeus were not qualified. They were identified at the end of Timothy and at the end of Alexander, at the end of 2 Timothy, as out. We don't know when Timothy got to Ephesus if that group where they met, if Alexander and Hymenaeus, that was the money, Temple of Diana, remember all the things that were going into that. So the money was there in that false teaching. So it's quite possible that that church ended up trying to find another place. We don't know what the conditions were. The Bible doesn't tell us. It doesn't matter. What we know is these individuals took these doctrines, went aside. There were men that were seeking to serve the Lord, and Timothy, along with Titus, has what we call, some call pastoral epistles, but it's really evangelism. This is evangelism epistle. This is my responsibility when I come to teach the gospel, is to cover these things. And so, it's not to self-promote. The objective of the work is to glorify God and the salvation and the preservation of souls. And quickly, 1 Timothy 5, 1 and 2, when we have terms, and this is very important as well for many denominational folks, when they hear pastor, they're thinking of the preacher. Who's the pastor? What are the terms? We have them all here. Elder, presbyter, or those who are the elders who are among you. Also recognize this. Every time you hear the word elders or pastors, it's plural. No singular pastor arrangement in the Bible. I, who am a fellow elder, a witness of the suffering of Christ, also partakers of the glory that will be revealed, shepherd, and there's another word for you, the flock of God which is among you, serving as overseers. So the three terms comprising of one position, just different aspects of that position. And, the hats that they wear, an overseeing function as a bishop, the care, the watching and the feeding of the flock as a shepherd or a pastor. Then the elder denotes age and wisdom and developed experience. It's kind of an interesting and intriguing story behind Mormonism, because when those young people come riding on the bicycle to your house, they're Elder John, and you, Elder, you're not very old. So how'd you come Old John? They named me that. I got some stories about some fellows visiting. They helped me. I got to say this about that. They'll knock on your door and want to talk about Jesus and their belief. I wish we had that kind of energy. Compared to the position today. I'm talking about pastor, elder. When we use the general term, and maybe even for us, do we see the word pastor or elder like Timothy saw it when he was walking into Ephesus, or Titus saw it when he was going to the Isle of Crete? 100 islands. The churches are about 5 or 6 years old, and he has a list to go assign elders in every city. And we don't do that, or at least we don't focus as much as we should or could on it. I want to say this about the eldership and what does occur. That's why I was bringing up Ephesus and how we don't know a lot of the things that did happen. Ed Carrow documents about the emergence of a Church of Christ denomination. And And we're in a couple of years from now of looking at maybe owning a building, buying or obtaining a place, a different place, or owning a building or whatever. But when you think about what occupies the time and the mind and the money of so many of the church's energies, it's about the property. And what Ed Carrow noted, because that did happen in the 1816, 17, 1800s, that just kind of came on in to us. You can go to Fair Street, finding Arch Street was at Fair, and then 7th and State, and then Arch Street. So, in other words, you can trail locations where various people have been on a piece of property. Does that really represent the nature of the church? And I think it does in our culture. It doesn't in others. I videoed this morning, or pictures this morning from Kennedy in Africa. It's not like here. They'll have a place, and sometimes they'll build it. It may be a brush arbor, but it's just a place to get to have the talk. But the reality is, from property less to property ownership, the basic change that takes place as a religious group moves toward a more sophisticated religious experience. That's Ed's language. He's one of the best historians, period. You don't even have to say Christian historian, but he's one of the best historians out there. That much of a membership of the Church of Christ has made its change to economic comfort and stability is apparent to the casual observer. We want to get comfortable. We were at a high level of concern coming into this summer with the AC not working. So in this, when we talk about oversight and those that would watch, there's this other aspect that comes in. It requires two men to qualify or desire the position, you might say. The plurality of men, and it is among them communicated in command, example, and inferred. A plurality of men is required. No single pastoral arrangement. The elder had authority, rule, oversight, responsibility. Only in a local congregation, a local church. And appointed to them did not extend beyond the flock that was among them. Is or was the function of an eldership that Timothy was setting up or arranging to make certain that the financial stability of a local congregation was survivable, sustainable. In other words, that the efforts of evangelism need to be certain that we would bring in the affluent that had money so that we could be financially stable. Was that an objective of Timothy? Were any of those things, you see how we think, and you see our culture and how we think. Were any of those things in the mind of Timothy when we were going to Ephesus? No. And our efforts, and saying this, about that, having spent several years under an eldership, and still remember Brother Williams and Basil early in the years, and me as an evangelist, and they were pushing, empowering. If I came in with something that we could do to reach out, to preach or to teach, they were pushing and supporting and then watching. And you can know, I've been in environments where we didn't have leadership and it was much more difficult. And so the Apostle Paul told Titus to go deal with what was lacking. So we do have to acknowledge this. It's lacking. Now, that doesn't mean that you, because it's lacking, go create something that is contrary to God's will. You don't bend. And we're not looking for somebody to make boss-like decisions. What we're looking for, though, is men that desire a good work. And as we consider what we have here, the people, the love, the needs, there is much work to be done. And if people don't desire to do that work, the work will not be done. And so, the text that we put up at the very end of our study from chapter 2 in Timothy about the woman, it was basically the essential call for us to serve. And seamlessly, this is a faithful saying that a man who desires the position of a bishop desires a good work. And he's a godly man. So, blameless, good behavior, just, holy. Any of these bring up any questions or any discussion? Blameless. Who is blameless? Hopefully, all of us are blameless. Now, that doesn't mean we go back through your life and we cannot find an incident, or you can't tell of an incident, I'm to blame. Of course there are many. What does it mean to be blameless? Anybody?
Have a penitent, prayerful heart. Examine and judge yourself constantly to make sure that you're in the faith.
Examining self, making certain that we are in the faith. And that blameless aspect is not the declaration by self that I'm without blame. It is, I have acknowledged my blame and taken it and have that clear conscience, that good heart. The behavior is kind of self-explanatory, just. Titus 1 and verse 8. In Titus 1 and verse 8, be holy or devout. Both of these things are just referring to people that are godly, that have they're doing what God would have them to do. They're not making any claim to fame or perfection. They're saying that, obviously, when I make those, then I make the turn. I make the turn. Elders would be examples to the flock. That's 1 Peter 5. Lifestyle worthy of imitation. Examples to the community reflects to their profession of faith. There's just certain how you're known, how you are known in the community. And this is not difficult. I mean, and even a man can know how he's known. He can know himself. Now, how about the husband of one wife? That's always been a good spot to have controversy when we're having the discussion. So, one must be married. We got that one. A man cannot be an adulterer or a polygamist. And by the way, I think in consideration in the first century, and when I traveled to Kenya, I told you, when I got over there, the issue about having discussion, it was not about homosexuality. It was about polygamy, the practice of it. And many people there who would become a Christian would be in a polygamist, would be in a relationship, would be a polygamist. What would have to happen? I got I'm asking questions. Husband and one wife. We're in Kenya now. 7 years ago, he's out of polygamy.
Was that a common practice in the early church, polygamy?
I think it was common practice. I don't know. At the time of, in the 60s or 70s, that had become less and less of a thing. But I think because of the culture, just like in Africa, the needs of the community brought polygamy. If a man had funds and house, and you had a woman, an indigent woman, then oftentimes that's where the relationship would be born out of. In this time and place, I don't know. Obviously, the husband of one wife, it was somewhere in the picture, don't you think? Do you think? I'm asking. She's asking me. I'm asking you. Do you think polygamy is what's under consideration in the husband of one wife? That's already been addressed.
Maybe showing some ignorance or whatever, but it looks like to me polygamy was an accepted practice in the first church, but not for an elder, because they wouldn't have this necessary qualification if it weren't an occurrence accepted in the first church.
Yeah.
I think he's differentiating between what was allowed under the law and what the Christian dispensation law was fulfilled, and some of the parts of the law were carried forward, and some were disqualified and could be no more, and that was one of them.
Husband of one wife. Apparently, this phrase, this Greek phrase, was kind of a saying of that day, and the saying would be a one-woman man. Now, whether that grew out of the fact that men would be in polygamous relationships, and there were some that would be a one-woman man, and that's how that became known, and that was the focus, and obviously that was the design and the teaching that Paul was giving in the book of Ephesians. Okay, so you go back to the discussion about that. It's being addressed to the church at Ephesus. As far as the law, the law of Christ. But was polygamy still? I believe it was still practiced. I think it was probably, well, not. The culture still accepted polygamy. Now, whether or not that's specific what he's addressing when he goes in there, if you walk into Ephesus and he's reading this statement, or if I'm walking into Little Rock Church of Christ and I read the statement as husband of one wife, what does that mean? I think that we can answer whether it was polygamy or what in the first century. Anybody? Mm-hmm.
I don't remember where it's at, but in the Old Testament, the Israelites had left God and they had taken wives that they weren't supposed to have. To get back with God, they had to send them all back.
There you go.
Resolve that relationship.
Yes.
So question, if a man is an elder today and his wife passes away, where does that put him? Does he need to step down as an elder?
There you go. That's those are the things I've lived through. Is that question? If a man has a wife, we're about to make the appointment. We've gone through the processes of having the discussion. The man desires a good work, and he is prepared. And his wife passes away, or he has just taken office. He's now in the position of serving as an elder, and his wife passes away 5 months later. Is he now no longer qualified? Now these are discussion questions that each group has to answer. I'll give you my answer when I'll give you the specific. Brother Basil, Sister Thelma passed away, and he resigns. Now, he didn't resign right that minute, but I'm saying, after it was kind of settled. And, I went to him and said I didn't accept his resignation. I didn't want to accept the resignation. And my view is that it did not disqualify you. However, there are other things that you have to consider as the man. And this is what Brother Basil said. All of my life, I have viewed that if a man was a widower, that he would not be suited to serve at that time. He said, I understand what you say, and I'm inclined to even agree with maybe what you're saying. But I believe that all my life, and I'm not going to change that conviction in this moment that it's on me. And I said, that's why you should not resign. But that was the wisdom that he had.
It bothered his conscience.
That he had,
If he would have continued.
if he had tried to change his mind, and he didn't, but things worked, and he did, and everything came. But that's how it came to be. So that does answer one question. To me. But when you're having this discussion, it becomes more volatile than that. There's where you have a man that has been married and now and divorced and now married again. The husband of one wife.
But he's still the husband of one wife.
If
he's not got two wives.
let's put the qualifier. if a man is lawfully divorced. That's the thing. And of course, if he's not lawfully divorced, then we got another issue anyway. So you see how that is. These are all difficult. These kind of topics, everybody kind of elevates a little bit because, you know, it's a lot of talk, and this is where men oftentimes go, no, I don't want to serve. I don't want to go through this. Yes.
That's why it's important that you know the people and have a
Exactly.
history with people,
Yes.
so you'll know and understand the circumstances, so you can make a true decision
Yeah.
about the choices.
Yeah. You got to know the people, and what you just said is the criteria. You got to know the people, and that is there should be communication. And if an individual is being considered or considering desiring the office, then it would be very profitable for individuals to just sit down and visit, just have a lunch or a coffee, or just get to know. And we do that now, but we don't do it like we should. And that is why it's lacking, is the elevation of communication and that oversight, that looking in on. I mean, we have people that are desiring a good work and doing a good work. But this is a design that God put up. Y'all. We must have submissive, obedient children. That's the other criteria. A bishop, one who rules his own house well, having his children in all submission, verse 4, with reverence. So, what's the implication on that? Is a man.
Considered children.
Hmm?
How long are they considered your children?
How long are they? Okay, so we have how long are they considered children?
There's children plural.
And is it plural? And this one is actually one that people do. People have strong opinions either way. I've got my lesson on it, and I can prove that, you know, that one child can be referred to as children. I have no issue whatsoever with that. But the biggest question though comes up to the discussion about how long, and if a child rebels, does that disqualify? We have a man who's serving as an elder, and his 35-year-old son falls away. Should he be removed? Those are questions that can only be answered by each local congregation. We can sit up here and speculate all day long about what if. You cannot. These are things that were never implanted with like this line. There is in these qualifications, and each one has to have the conviction. If it means plural, then your conviction of that, and the man has one, then you're going to have, that will be the one thing that you and him would have to talk about, or the congregation would have to say, well, we'll have to table that because we can't do it. So, one of the things we just don't know. But the one thing we know is the plural is inclusive of singular, and I've got several verses there that I believe would teach and show that to be so. And even in Titus, Timothy 5, when we get to that, if a believing man or woman has widows, verse 4. Now if a widow has children or grandchildren, let them first show piety at home and repay their parents.
From, you know, just looking at that, that's a group of people as opposed to an individual. When you're talking about the widows, that's a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
But this is specifically related to the man, what the man must pay, as opposed to.
You're talking about the individual or the groups of, right.
That's an individual having those things as opposed to the widow, but they're talking about anybody who would be, and it puts them in a group of people who can take care of them.
Yeah, so let's look at, with this in mind, let's look at, like in 1 Timothy 5 and verse 9, do not let a widow under 60 years old be taken into the number, and not unless she has been the husband or the wife of one man. So when we get into that part of it, I mean, the word itself, the TEKNON, is comprehensive. Children, whether you have 1 or 5 or 12, it's still, they're your children. How many children do you have? 1 child. There again, though, this is a topic that in a local, see, what is the other aspect? So you have a man that desires the office. What's the next aspect that has to occur? Now, let's skip through all of the qualifications for a minute. What has to happen next? Let's say a man is qualified and he now has the position. What's next? Congregational cooperation. Everyone has to be on board. The congregation has to recognize. You see, so the two things is the desire and to recognize. What's in between is this list. And we get to do it again in Titus, and we'll try to maybe even get a little bit more detailed in a couple of the questions that are being asked today, since our time is going to get tight, and then I'll still be on the same subject in a while. We'll come back to it in Titus. We will. We'll do it again. And try to give you a little more detail about children, the things that are coming up here. The basic qualification, though, is a man must demonstrate the fact that he keeps his children under control with all dignity. And I've seen many men who have done that very well throughout the child's upbringing. But what did God say about his children when they turned to the world? My children have rebelled. Now, it didn't disqualify him as God. So the point is simply this. A man serving in the capacity as an elder cannot suspend the future decision-making process of his child. He influences it. And this is where you have to demonstrate within your life that you have had that kind of influence. And I think that is, that's, well, I still recall one of the elders and his son coming out with a lifestyle that was contrary to God's will. And I thought it was handled by him, his family, and the church properly. Don't think there was a resignation, but there was discipline, and there was, it was, in other words, the demonstration was that there was oversight in the house, and that the child had rebelled. And as elders within a local congregation, you will have individuals within the congregation that will rebel, and you have to show the same disciplinary decorum that brings them back, or has the discipline that rejects, that has no fellowship. He seeks to help support things that are good. This is really where I wanted to get to, and we'll have about 6 minutes, 5 minutes in the break. Does he have relationship skills? What Sister Ellen was talking about, in knowing the people, developing those, talking with others, providing counsel, getting to know, having the conversation, and then develop, grow, build, and improve. And this is where I have to make a petition to those men that might be in a position where you say, well, I'm okay here, but I could be better here. This is what the list, the qualifications. When you check off blameless, does that mean you are forever and from now on blameless? Temperate, sober-minded, good behavior? What I'm saying is this: are any of these qualifications subjective? In some respect, yeah. Not greedy for money, but hasn't taken a vow of poverty. Or he's had a successful business, but he doesn't demonstrate greed for money. We don't question. When you read the list, are they incremental? And do they continue to develop? When you read the list, can a man develop in these areas? When a man takes office, has he tapped out? He's planed up. Yes, sir.
You and I've had this discussion before, and my beliefs and where you're going with this, most of these are subjective. The one few are objective. Husband and one wife is objective.
Right.
There's not a growth period there. You either are or aren't. The other key one is apt to teach and to convict the gainsayer.
Yeah.
That's not a growth. You've got to be able to do that.
Those are the novice, the apt to teach, these that are subjective and can develop. Some are, some are not. When a man comes in and he takes that office and it's talking about that he has this quality of not quarrelsome and gentle, well, maybe he's doing better. I mean, he's not, in other words, you cannot be lacking, but have you achieved perfection in all of these qualities? Can a man continue to grow? And I think that he has to continue to grow. And I also believe this, that if you're questioning your qualifications, if a man is questioning his qualifications, and you consider yourself needing to work on these, and this is what I spent weeks, months talking with my dad about, and that would be the fact that if you have an essential qualification, if you question your own qualifications, I think that would be essential, just like Basil did when he wouldn't change his mind in the moment about himself. And I think that the incredibly important thing is that men do realize that you put yourself into that position, you embrace the qualities, and I pray that we all should be embracing the qualities. There's a couple of things that are not out there for everyone on the marriage part, but self-controlled, not quick-tempered, not contentious, but content for the faith. There again, you see how the complexity of this is just not simple, is it? There is a time that a man must stand, and like Terry was talking about, in the face of the gainsayers. And then another time where he is extremely tactful at trying to get someone to understand. He's not self-willed.
A very important part of this, though, is to make sure that any of these areas in which someone is working, trying to develop, and trying to grow, that they haven't had some issues that would bring bad testimony or reproach from those outside.
And that,
you don't want anything happen that would be detriment to the church.
Correct. And that, and the priority that puts into place, and that would be a man disqualifying himself because of something that could damage the influence that he would have as an elder if he was in that position because of something. And those are all things that have to be cleaned off the plate, that have to be dealt with before you move forward. But at the same time, it's God's desire. It is God's will. We're going to post up there, it's almost 16, we're getting to, or 10, 15, able to teach. We'll stop there and go through that particular section next week, and then move right on into and through the mystery of godliness. There's a few quick statements that are made in the mystery of godliness that are very telling about what's coming into the future. Anyway, we'll take a break and we'll see y'all back at 10:30.